The morning of October 5th, 1944, lay quiet and brittle over the rail junction near Wołwich in occupied Poland. Frost clung to every sleeper. A railway worker studied two small iron nails in his hand. He knew how sensitive the turnouts were. He also knew a panzer column depended on this line. He believed these nails could halt the armored beast rolling toward the Vistula. German guards watched the junction without interest. They believed the track crews understood their place. Supply trains passed through each day, supporting units trying to contain Soviet pressure. The Germans expected routine. They did not see the narrow margin that separated smooth movement from disaster. The worker waited for an opening that would let him distort the switching rod by a tiny degree. He set the nails into the turnout linkage where metal met wood. The nails shifted the geometry by a fraction of a finger width. Under normal use, the lever would hold. Under heavy load, the rails would part at the wrong heartbeat. He stepped away as a distant engine cough signaled an armored transport train preparing to enter the junction under winter light. The panzer column the Germans hoped to reinforce was a formation hardened by months of retreat. Its backbone included late-model Panzer, 4 tanks with side skirts and 75mm cannons. These machines dominated open ground. Their armor shrugged off most partisan weapons. Allied forces understood the threat these tanks posed to infantry, pushed across the Vistula plain. Every supply run extended their reach. Crews inside the steel hulls trusted their machines. The tanks rolled forward with a slow confidence shaped by years of doctrine. German commanders believed mobility and rapid concentration of armor could still impose control on Polish territory. Their logic depended on stable logistics. Every shell, every fuel drum, every road wheel came by rail. Without these lifelines, the panzer formation became a shell of painted metal. The railway worker understood that heavy machines often hid fragile systems. He had spent years maintaining rails that could twist under winter strain. He noticed small shifts that escaped military eyes. He recognized that even armored giants could be humbled by a change in alignment, no wider than a match. His insight came from patience rather than training, from watching metal behave under pressure. The worker came from a line of track maintainers who spent their lives studying iron, timber, and tension. He had no military rank. He had no weapon. He had only experience with machines that failed in predictable ways. He had seen derailments caused by frost expansion. He had repaired lines bent by heavy loads. He understood leverage better than many officers who commanded trains. He learned to stay quiet during occupation. His value to the Germans lay in keeping traffic moving. His true loyalty belonged elsewhere. Each shift brought chances to observe guards, schedules, and patterns. He noted when inspections were slow and when supervisors were distracted. His habit of patient watching shaped the idea that small tools could alter grand movements. When he first suggested weakening a turnout to resistance members, several doubted him. They expected explosives. They imagined cutting entire rails. They believed simple tools could not damage armored supply lines. He explained that saboteurs often failed because they used noisy methods. A subtle mechanical change could create confusion without revealing cause. His argument convinced them to let him try one act of sabotage using nothing more than 2 nails. The flaw he targeted lay in the geometry of the turnout mechanism. Heavy trains relied on precise angles to guide wheels across joined rails. A slight shift could cause the flange to follow the wrong path. He aimed to create a momentary gap that appeared accidental. Under moderate weight, the lever would hold. Under extreme weight, the rod would slip a fraction. That was enough to redirect the leading wheels. He chose nails because they blended with the gravel and timber. They weighed almost nothing. They cost nothing. They offered exactly the right thickness to force the linkage into a deceptive position. The worker understood the physics with clarity earned from years of repairs. The nails would not break the track. They would only invite the train to misread its path at the worst possible moment. Weakening the turnout required timing. He studied freight logs to determine when armored wagons passed. He observed the morning supply run that carried replacement road wheels, ammunition, and fuel toward the Panzer formation. He knew the lead wagon carried the heaviest load. When that wagon reached the misaligned junction, the turnout would split under full stress, redirecting the wheels into the side track at speed. The transport engine entered the junction with a slow grind that shook the frosted ground. Steam drifted past the turnout as the leading wagon pressed its full weight onto the rails. The nails held their false alignment until the exact moment the wheels reached the switching point. Under stress, the linkage shifted with a sharp metallic snap that masked itself inside the roar of the train. The leading axle followed the wrong route. As the turnout slipped open, the wagon lurched toward the side track while the rear wheels still pushed forward on the main line. The structure twisted violently. Metal shrieked. The wagon toppled onto its side with a heavy crash. Its load of road wheels and ammunition scattered across the gravel as dust and steam filled the junction. The following wagons slammed into the wrecked lead car. Their momentum forced a chain reaction that bent couplers and tore buffers apart. Several wagons lifted off their rails and collapsed into a heap of steel frames and splintered boards. Guards shouted in confusion as boiling steam hissed over the junction. None understood why the turnout had failed so suddenly during an otherwise routine morning run. The derailment halted movement across the region within minutes. German officers believed an attack had struck the line. They rushed engineers to the junction expecting explosives or track mines. The worker kept his distance while remaining ready to assist with repairs if ordered. He watched their confusion grow as they examined the turnout. No scorch marks appeared. No shattered bolts lay nearby. Engineers removed gravel and inspected the linkage under winter light. They found nothing that resembled intentional sabotage. The nails had fallen free during the violent derailment. The mechanism appeared worn, rather than damaged. Officers argued over possible causes. Some blamed frost. Others blamed poor maintenance. None considered the precision required to alter the geometry by such a small but decisive degree. The wreck blocked the only route capable of carrying heavy loads toward the Panzer formation. Clearing the debris required cranes, replacement sleepers, and several days of work. Supply officers reported immediate shortages of ammunition and spare parts. The delay softened the strength of the armored column facing Soviet pressure. The workers saw how a minor defect had expanded into a regional disruption. The Panzer formation waited for replacement road wheels and ammunition that never arrived. Crews attempted to repair worn components using scavenged parts. Tanks that needed new track links remained idle in farm courtyards. Commanders felt pressure as Soviet artillery grew louder each day. Without reliable resupply, the formation lost its ability to maneuver. Mobility, once the hallmark of German armor, faded on the muddy approaches. Reports reached the unit describing a major derailment near Woolwich. Officers assumed partisans had used explosives. They did not imagine the failure came from two ordinary nails. Their frustration mounted as their tanks consumed fuel and ammunition faster than expected. The shortage forced them to consolidate vehicles. Several positions weakened as armor redistributed to cover exposed flanks. The delay allowed Soviet forces to advance with renewed confidence. Infantry moved behind self-propelled guns while scouting units probed the thinning German lines. When contact occurred, several panzer crews hesitated to engage. Their tanks risked immobilization due to worn components. The front line shifted. A logistical wound created by a single worker now shaped the combat unfolding on the Vistula plain. The derailment became a minor note in German records, described only as mechanical failure on a cold morning. No investigation uncovered its true cause. The railway worker returned to routine duties. He repaired the same junction weeks later when traffic resumed. None suspected that his 2 nails had halted a column that once threatened to reinforce the German line near the Vistula. Resistance members learned from his success. They recognized that simple changes could force the occupiers to waste time and resources. They began to target weak points in telegraph lines, freight brakes, and signaling systems. Each act created delays that multiplied across the network. German logistics strained under pressure they could not easily trace. The worker understood the broader truth revealed by his action. Complex systems carried hidden fragility. Great machines depended on small components, noticed only by patient observers. One man with 2 nails changed the course of a regional armored deployment. His lesson endured. Strength can collapse when a single overlooked detail shifts at the right moment in history.